The U.S. Army garrison in Alaska maintains all Army-managed facilities and lands in support of the U.S. Army's mission to project land combat power anywhere, in any environment, worldwide. U.S. Army Alaska supports national security, homeland defense, and state police authorities, and the training lands and installations are key to the success of these missions. U.S. Army Garrison Alaska manages over 1.5 million acres of installation, training lands, and other sites, representing 10% of the total U.S. Army land inventory. In Alaska, these lands span the boreal forest, the foothills of the Alaska Range, and spots along the southeastern and south-central coastlines. They are often in remote areas with difficult terrain and rare road access. Wherever Army activity might go, program personnel must go, facing difficult logistics and far preceding the timeline for military use. Army resource management is a balance of soldier training, compliance with regulation, and resource conservation. The goal is maximizing use of training land while preventing harm to legally protected resources. Compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act, the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, Army and Department of Defense regulations, and various executive orders and management plans shape daily stewardship standards.
The central Tanana Valley has been home to people since the last ice age. Over 500 generations have been raised here, and traces of these past lives are recorded in the earth. People left evidence of household activities, successful hunts, and burial of their loved ones in remnants of stone, bone, and other organic remains. Army archaeologists strive to determine which sites have the greatest potential for teaching us about the people who lived here in the past, figure out mutually beneficial strategies to maximize soldier training and site preservation, and educate the current users of these lands on their human time depth and significance. There has been a continuous occupation of Army-managed lands for the last 14,000 years, and evidence of this has been found in over 700 prehistoric archaeological sites and nearly 30 homestead-era structures. 77 of these sites have been found eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. We carefully inventory these assets, monitor their condition, and survey lands for yet unrecorded sites. Army-managed lands are unique in that they offer protection for some resources by limiting access and development, while still allowing active use. Many places on the landscape that the military values for modern training were also ideal living sites in the past. A primary goal of archaeologists managing these lands is to determine which archaeological sites have cultural significance or information potential and need to be protected, and which sites are insignificant in our quest to learn more about the past. With help from consulting parties, tribal partners, and state regulators, we evaluate sites toward freeing up land for soldier training. U.S. Army Garrison Alaska archaeologists have a two-pronged approach to managing sites. First, a 5-year plan takes us across the training areas to monitor sites for damage, to survey areas that the Army has future plans to use for soldier training, and to evaluate known sites in high-traffic areas. Although only 14% of total Army-managed lands have been inventoried for new sites, 90% of areas adjacent to Army development have been examined. Second, significant sites in high-traffic areas are protected by one or more of 3 methods: Seibert stakes that indicate no-go zones, hedgehogs that block trails and thus access to sites by heavy vehicles, and gravel capping to seal archaeological materials below ground where vehicle traffic is unpreventable. We continuously educate soldiers on how to prevent site disturbance and how to report on discoveries. Myriad research topics at scales from individual site histories to large landscape-based investigations are possible. While most of the archaeological sites record brief visits and provide little new information about the past, there are highly significant archaeological sites on Army-managed lands. Located in the southern Tanana Flats, They Were There is the English translation of a Dene name given to an important site by the people of Healy Lake Village. A radiocarbon date from charcoal found deeply buried with artifacts demonstrated that the remains were from the end of the Pleistocene period. In 2013, a multi-year partnership began with Texas A&M University to scientifically excavate this important site. Archaeologists uncovered 3 different occupations dating to 14,000, 13,000, and 6,000 years ago. The oldest occupation has a large bison butchery locality with stone cutting and scraping tools and discarded projectile points. Analysis of material from several years of excavation is currently taking place. Scientists are analyzing the game animals, stone tools, organic tools including bone needles, spatial arrangement of artifacts, the DNA of significant species, and stable isotopes in hearths. They Were There is the second oldest site in Alaska and has potential to answer important questions about some of the first people in North America, how they organized their lives, and the plants and animals they relied on to survive in the subarctic. High above the Delta River Plain is the Delta River Overlook Archaeological Site. 13,000 years of human history can be traced in thin layers of soil. University of Alaska Fairbanks archaeologists worked with the Army in 2015 and 2017 to conduct scientific excavations at the site. They found that people visited this location at least a dozen times throughout the past. Ancient people likely sat on the edge of the bluff and watched for game, including bison, elk, and caribou in the valley below. Stone tools, animal remains, and plant remains are well preserved in the sediment. This allowed archaeologists to identify hide processing areas and locations of structures. They determined that the site was used in the winter months during some of the occupations. The stratigraphy has allowed scientists to track regional and local environmental changes in great detail. This site is one of the only sites in Alaska with such variation in subsistence, tool use, and household activities through the entire prehistoric period.
Historic properties in Fort Wainwright's built environment help convey the history of our nation, the military, and the interface of the military with Alaska in the concise time period of 1939 to 1961. Alaska's pivotal role in World War II and the early Cold War was key to positive military outcomes. Alaska's strategic location and challenging climate made it the perfect place from which to deploy globally in a short timeline and test military assets for performance issues in extreme cold. Lessons learned by the Cold Weather Test Detachment and the Army Aeromedical Lab accelerated the Army's ability to fight in northern climates and keep personnel safe by developing such things as improved aviator clothing and devices like the Personal Rescue Beacon. The heart of the built environment is the Ladfield National Historic Landmark. Designated in 1985 with a period of significance from 1939 to 1945, the district features 14 contributing resources. The landmark was recognized for Ladfield's role in World War II Lend-Lease operations and as the location of cold weather equipment testing. It was also a hub for the Air Transport Command, responsible for ensuring cargo made it around the globe during and after the war. The state-recognized Ladd Air Force Base Cold War Historic District is also eligible for the National Register. Its 34 contributing properties interpret the base's role as home to reconnaissance and fighter intercept squadrons, which kept watch over the northern and western borders from 1947 to 1961. Army-specific management can be challenging when structures predate advancements in subarctic construction. Evolving Army requirements for energy reduction, square footage adjustments, and mission activities force difficult decisions that can be contrary to preservation goals. Cultural resource staff attempt to strike a balance between facility use at an active military installation and ensuring resource maintenance is done in accordance with treatment standards. We look for new ways to preserve and enhance our aging built environment in ways that will accommodate Army goals. Education is key to ensuring users appreciate older resources, and it helps to remember that heritage conveyed in the built environment is truly about the people who used these buildings. There are research topics yet to be completed that would benefit resource management and increase the body of knowledge about Alaska's military history. Topics of future interest include post-1961 missions, the Vietnam and Korean era, Black engineers who built the Alaska Highway in 1942, and significant military figures and their interface with the Alaskan community. The struggles managing the built environment have yielded good news stories. The Chena Elementary School was a mid-century experiment in teaching philosophy as embodied by architecture. Once at risk of demolition, the school found new life as a youth center and later an adult education center. Eligible for the National Register due to its unique architectural story, it retains its original purpose. When a new hangar was being built within the district, the standard design was inappropriate for both the climate and its historic setting. Consultation with stakeholders on previous projects increased understanding that resulted in a design that was agreeable to installation proponents, military users, and builders, creating a building that met Army requirements prior to consultation with stakeholders. The program deals with more than the management of archaeological sites in the built environment. Staff also assist commanders in meeting the federal trust responsibility of the U.S. Army through government-to-government relationships with Alaska Native tribal governments. Garrison and tribal leaders and staff meet regularly to discuss upcoming and past Army activities. They consult on land stewardship and concerns of the tribal citizenry. Additionally, mutually beneficial projects are created that build trust and transparency. One recent project was the placement of land acknowledgement signage at installation access points. Tribal representatives worked with Army to create these signs that not only acknowledge the first stewards of these lands, but educate the Fort Wainwright community.
The program engages external stakeholders and partners in its management practices. Stakeholder working group meetings are held biannually, and participants include subject matter experts on local history, preservation, and archaeology. The Bureau of Land Management, the State Office of History and Archaeology, State Historic Preservation Officer, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the National Park Service advise and consult on various projects. Leveraging university partnerships has resulted in university-led field schools which conduct surveys to inventory newly discovered sites, evaluate known sites, and train students in management practices. Work with university partners has opened up areas for training and brought expertise on a variety of scientific techniques, making important discoveries about people that lived here in the past.